So I've had a couple people ask me about leg cues, how to teach them, what they mean, why I use spurs for them. The simple answer for that is I use spurs because it's such a small area that I'm asking that I want to make sure my signal and my communication is as clear as possible. Kind of like using a rope halter versus a standard nylon halter. You want to make that communication clear when you're educating your horse and communicating and riding and doing a job. You want to make sure you have clear communication. So that's the reason for my spurs. I just have a small rawl on mine. You could go smaller, you could go bigger. I've chosen these because they are more comfortable for me and I've gotten used to them, so I just stick with what I know. So horses learn how to use their body 3 different spots on each side. Shoulders, ribs, and hips. So it's 6 buttons on each, 3 on each side. So where these buttons are, right there is shoulder, right there is rib, right there is hip. So you can see why oftentimes the spur actually comes in handy, because those buttons are very close together. And for a really well-broke horse, you may not need them as much if you're really consistent with how you ask and you can just kind of coordinate with your reins, and you may not need spurs at that point, but some horses, it just helps them out. Like Thunder here, I can get him to move off my leg just fine without the spurs, but he likes the clear communication of what I want. It's just less frustrating for him and less frustrating for me. We can get the job done that we need to get done, and I don't have to worry about asking him a second time. So I'll just go ahead and show you what I'm talking about here. And I'm going to coordinate with my reins a little bit too. So I'm going to start by asking him to move his hips or move his shoulders this way. So all I'm going to do is apply this leg right here, like so. And he moved off of that. Readjust him here. I'll show you again from this angle. I'll move him this way now. Those flies are bothering him. So I'm going to adjust my leg, put my leg on, adjust my reins. There we go. He almost took it as a side pass there for a second. Back up. Back up. Good boy. So again, I'm applying this outside leg, moving his shoulders over and out like that. So that is just basic shoulder control, just being able to move him over in the shoulder. I want him, when I apply this outside leg, I would like to see this shoulder move out first. There he had to readjust a little bit. Let me see if I can do that again. He steps back, but out and around that way. Asking him to move around a little bit there. Moving this way. So that's shoulders. There's a noodle in the way too. So that's shoulders. Now for hips, and I'll show you how you start teaching this in a second. I'm just showing you how it is right now. For hips, when I want to move these hips that way, I'll just bring my leg back, ask him to move his hip over, just like that. Ideally, the front end won't move, but it's okay if it moves a little bit. I'll move him back this way. There's a good boy. And Thunder's well broken enough that I don't need to really help him much with my reins anymore, but I'll show you how to help them with your reins here in a bit. So when you put the two together, the shoulders and the hips together, you get a side pass. Now to first start teaching the side pass, you can use the fence so that your horse doesn't get stuck moving forward too much, but you also don't want them to get stuck moving backwards. So to move sideways, you really just kind of want a slightly forward and over movement. What I mean by that is you want him crossing over the front in the front end and the back end. You don't want him sucking behind and stepping behind himself. So to move him over this way, I'm going to put my cue right in the middle, and I'm going to shift him over a little bit with my reins too, and side and move him over. And he can go in a pretty straight line, and I appreciate that. Just like that. Way too close. Wait. Good. Then we go this way. And he's being a little bit lazy today. He's not really giving me a lot of energy, but he is doing exactly what I asked him to do. And that's all I can ask of him. So, I am helping him a little bit by decorating him over the shoulder. So you want, it's basically shoulder, hip, until he gets the idea of putting it together, like so. So moving off into the leg in the standstill like this is the beginning of learning how to do it in forward motion, which I'll talk about that more in a separate video. But I'll go ahead and go over how I taught some of this first. So on a horse that doesn't know how to do this, what you'll want to do to start moving the shoulders, we'll start with the shoulders first. I like to two-rein them when they're first learning so I can help them out. I want to dip that nose in, that's a little too much. I want to dip that nose in just enough that I can see the eye. I don't want him all the way over here, but just enough that I can get a little bit of bend in that neck and see the eye. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply that leg or that spur on the outside, right where I showed you earlier, right about where the girth is, and he's already thinking about it. But I'm going to just ask nicely, ask, until he gives, and then I'll do it. He's thinking I'm asking for something else. So I'll do that again. Like so. And it may take your horse a little bit in the beginning to understand it, and it may help you to start in a snaffle or a halter. He's more advanced, so I've got him in a curb, so but it's whatever makes you and your horse more comfortable and makes your communication better. So I'll go ahead and do it this way too. Turn him this way, move him over. Simple stuff like that. And then for the hips, it is very similar. It's just slightly opposite. So say I want to move his hip that way. I'm going to ask him to bend a little bit again this way so that I can see his eye. That's a little too much. Just enough to see his eye. Then I'm going to bring my leg back. And you can bring it back further in the beginning to get the communication across, to just make it that much more clear. The saddle's a little stiff. And then move it over like that. Like, I don't really need to move my leg that far back on him. But for horses that don't know this, I will bring it quite a bit further back to make that much more clear to them that that's what I want them to move. I want them to move their hip over, because I don't want, if they've already learned how to move their shoulders over, they might think, oh, leg on, you want me to move my shoulder over? No. It's a totally separate cue. It's all the way back here. And then as they get more confident and better at it, you can move the cues a little bit closer together. And then you can put the two together by putting your side pass cue on. And that one, once the first two are getting there pretty good, that one comes along pretty easily.